好，那这边做简单的讲师介绍。那11点的议程呢，是由这个Paweł Sasko 来自这个 CD PROJEKT RED 的副游戏总监，他会跟大家介绍，在整个这个他们的公司里面呢，有经历过这么多的3A 专案，那很多都是有脍炙人口的故事跟剧情，然后也有很多很复杂的游戏系统，他要如何用任务的这个形式呢，包装起来，让玩家可以被体验到。那 Paweł 他就是在好几个系列大作里面，就是负责这一块整合的核心人物。好，那我们请用热烈的掌声欢迎 Paweł Sasko， 谢谢。
你好。Hi Penguin， 好高兴在台北见到你们。我的中文还不太好，as you can imagine。Why 中文？Anyway, that's it. That's as much as Mandarin going to be here. My dears, I'm going to be talking to you about commandments of quest design. So how do we make quests in CD PROJEKT RED? I will try not to make it very boring, but we'll see how it goes. So, my dears, I am an associate game director in CD PROJEKT RED. What I do, I direct video games. Together with the game director, Gabe Amatangelo, I'm assigned right now to the Cyberpunk IP. Those are the games that I've been working on. Actually, I started in the industry 19 years ago. That's been already quite some time. However, the first games that I worked on all were canceled and never shipped. I guess if you do it long enough, that's exactly how it happens. And at some point, you just land up in this situation. I joined the team during The Witcher 2, Assassins of Kings, Enhanced Edition when I was a quest designer, and then on The Witcher 3, The Wild Hunt, I was a senior quest designer. I did a bunch of main story and a bit of side content, and then on the Hearts of Stone and Blood and Wine, I became a lead of the team and led the team throughout the expansions and through Phantom and through Cyberpunk 2077. Then from the release of 2077, I became a quest director, where I got, outside of the quest team, also open world and cinematic departments. And right now, as an associate game director, I work in Boston. So I moved to America, where food is shit. But what I can say, I came here to Taiwan and really got depressed, about American food. So you guys have some wonderful street food. And thank you, Jack, for taking us there. I don't know where Jack is, but yes, he was showing us amazing Taiwanese food. Okay then, my dears, I'm going to spoil some stuff for you because I will be using the examples from our games, okay? I assume that maybe some of you didn't play Phantom Liberty, so try not to spoil this one that much, but the rest I'll have to spoil just a bit because I need to use examples. Otherwise, it will be really hard for me to explain it to you what the hell I mean. So this is how the day is going to be looking with me today. So we start from narrative pipeline. This is the way how we build our stories in CD PROJEKT RED. Then we'll talk about the team structure, rules of quest design, which will be the biggest part. I'll give you some takeaways, and then I'll have a small extra thing at the end for you. And then, well, hopefully we have some time for questions. However, I normally speak 3 times longer than I anticipate, so I don't think so. But we'll see. You can always catch me as well, me and Shama, later, and we can talk. So, my dears, when it comes to the narrative pipeline, I'll just give you a very boring rundown right now of how it looks like. So we normally start, at the top of that list, which is story outline. Story outline is a document that describes the story from beginning till the end in a very short form. It can be a 1-pager, it can be 2 pages of the text. That's kind of it. At the moment when we finish working on a story outline for a big game, like Witcher 3, Cyberpunk, New Witcher, or new Cyberpunk games, those outlines are 30 to 40 pages of text in English, because in Mandarin, it would be less. Then we move on to the quest design document, and in that level, this is the moment when quest designers are dividing the storyline into the chunks, and they are designing very specifically what happens one after another in your quest. And the important part about it is that we really want to make sure that when you're writing your quest design document, you're describing things exactly as they happen on the screen. Now the next thing, my dears, is a draft implementation. So draft implementation is this stage in the game that is called first playable. Maybe you have heard it from many different devs all around the world. The first playable is normally a version of the game where you have something running on a gray box locations when nothing is textured yet and doesn't look beautiful at all, but you can play it. And when it comes to the RPGs, as our games, when you have every single quest playable in the game and the game is composed out of quests, then the whole game is playable. And that's always the goal of the draft implementation stage. Now, from there, we actually move on to something that's probably really familiar to all of you. So we go into pre-alpha, alpha, pre-beta, beta, then we polish it, and then we ship it. And in many cases, of course, we look into post-release support if there's any issues, that players report, or if we work on any content that we want to ship afterwards. Now, this actually in reality looks kind of like this. This is the whole beginning of that narrative pipeline. As you can see, we are working on the story outline, and we are iterating that outline actually to the point when it's good. It's not something that we write down and then have it ready. We really do a lot of iterations and a lot of changes before we actually really arrive at the version that we like. Normal stages in the story outline are you have 1 page, then 2 pages, then 4 pages, then 10 pages, 16 pages, 20 pages, 30 or 40 pages. That's it. That's how you finish. And the way we do it is we agree first that the 1-pager is an exciting and intriguing and just a good quality description of the story. And based on that, we build 2-pager. So you sort of can imagine it's like a pyramid. You build the fundament, and based on that fundament, you keep on building your house until you have the whole story outline ready. And then eventually you get that story outline approved, and that moment when it gets approved, it actually moves on to the quest design stage when we do pretty much the same thing. It's just from the writers who are doing before the writing, now it's quest designers who are doing all the work when it comes to putting together that document. And I'll tell you more about it in a moment. When that gets approved, we go into the draft stage, as I mentioned, so we are working on first implementation. Now, the sad part is that at any point, actually, we can decide that a given quest and given part of a story is not approved anymore. Sometimes it happens, actually, when you start working on a story and you really try to make it work well and really want to make it impact you, impact your players and really get the emotions out, you'll discover that not everything works. That's something that was maybe great when it comes to story outline. When you went to the stage of quest design, your team, your designers, maybe you, just lost focus, and that is not good anymore. So you have to go back. And we do that going back so many times. We do it constantly when we work on our quests, but this is one of the reasons why we are able to achieve good quality, my dears. So now we are going to touch the team structure really briefly, because this will lead us then to the rules of the quest design. And I need to explain you that so that you can see the way how we are working. So when it comes to the team structure, we as CD PROJEKT, some time ago, we went through the transformation internally, and from waterfall methodology, production methodology, when we were producing one thing after another, we changed into cross-functional teams, and we changed into agile. And the way how this works is that you have teams in your studio who are composed out of specialists of many different disciplines. And I'll tell you in a moment an example of that when it comes to the content team. But now let's look deeper into those cross-functional teams. So you actually have 2 types of the cross-functional teams that you normally have in your team, in your organization. And one type of the team is working on the content. And those are content teams. They work normally on quests or story or, however your game is divided. Then another type is a feature teams. Those are the teams that are working on features like police system or, character progression, anything bigger that is important to have in your game. Now, let's look actually how the content team looks like. So this is just an example from Phantom Liberty of how content team looked like during the production of the expansion. So as you can see, you have representatives of most of the disciplines in your studio actually coming in together as a part of that content team. And again, here I'm talking to you about big AAAs, right? So have that in mind. If you're working in a smaller studio, you will discover that many of those roles are covered by the same person. I hope that is obvious for everyone. This is the structure that we are using because we are a big AAA studio. Now, my dears, important thing for me is that I have their quest designers, cinematic designers, open world designers, and all kinds of disciplines. They all collaborate. That's the difference to how the waterfall works. So in this setup, from the very beginning, everyone who is a member of a content team contributes to that quest. Everyone talks about it. Everyone discusses it. So, for instance, when we've been working on Somewhat Damaged, that's the quest from Phantom Liberty, maybe some of you played it. It's a quest that is a horror. And that horror actually has a very specific requirements when it comes to the VFX, light, and many other things actually that have to come together, have to come in for the quest to really work and really feel great. And because of that, it makes so much sense to have the VFX artists, lighting artists, and other disciplines included from the very, very beginning in your content team, even though normally those are the disciplines that come in later in your production. Now, there's something here that is called a CTPO, so I need to explain this. In agile methodology, there is a position called a product owner. And a product owner is a person who handles a given section of the game, handles a given feature, or handles a given piece of content. You know, it's kind of like responsible for it, helps to direct it, helps other directors, to cascade the vision, and so on. The CDPO is a content team product owner. That's a person who is responsible for that in the scale of the given content team. That is very important here, that in each content team, we actually normally have that position, and a person who takes that position, it usually is quest designer or cinematic designer or level designer, but in most cases, quest designer. And the reason for that is because this is a person that in most cases knows everything, what is going on in the whole quest, and puts the whole thing together. And that's the really important bit. I'll move on from here, but of course, after the session, we can talk together if you are interested a bit more in Agile. This is a bit boring, but maybe some of you want to know more about this. Now, this is like a goal of the whole Agile. So alignment and ownership. Like in the big game development studio, as designers, as directors, we are unable to make all the decisions. In reality, all my juniors, specialists, seniors, experts, leads, and directors, everyone who reports to me in some way, they are making those decisions every day. They're making those decisions every single day. And I cannot be everywhere to make those decisions. So what I have to do is make sure we are aligned, that they understand the vision, that they understand what our goals are, but then they are able to go in and just make their own decisions. The best that they can. Of course, there are situations when, let's say, 10% of the time, this will be off and you have to do a small correction because someone just misunderstood or maybe had a bit different vision. That happens, we're all humans. But in most cases, all the team members will make right decisions when it comes to direction of the content. So the fact that everyone is working in the teams, that they can make decisions about the things that they're building, that being features or content, is really, really valuable. And it impacts at the end the game, the product that you are building. And I'm a very big fan of this approach, also because this is very scalable. This is maybe one of the issues that you heard about. When it comes to AAA, as a AAA developers, we have this problem that when there's so many of us, let's say when it comes to our games, we work normally of a core team of 350 to 400 people, and all of those people are in-house, right? This is not outsourced. This is just an in-house developers. It's incredibly difficult to be everywhere and make all the decisions and just, help to direct everyone. Every team member has to be able to do it on their own. And when the team scales up and when they grow, actually, they are still able to make those decisions and everything still works, which completely falls apart when it comes to waterfall production methodology. Anyway, my dears, that's it. That was the most boring part of this presentation. Now we're going to have some fun, finally. So, let's go to the rules of quest design. I had to talk to you about the narrative pipeline and stream structure so that you know the context, right? How all of those things are created. Now, we are going to go over things that I have learned throughout many years of working on a quest. You know, I've been doing this for 19 years as a quest designer on different positions, but always I've been working on quests in some way. So I wanted to walk you through this. And one of the first things that I always teach my designers is, contrary to what we normally say in cinematography, in video games, playing is the most important element. So what I always encourage my designers to do when they build their quest is to put emphasis on playing the story rather than telling it or showing it. And I will tell you more about this in a moment. We pay so much attention to actually constructing the sequences in our games to make sure that you can be there and you can play it and they happen as you play rather than find out about them or you're told about them. Great example, Bloody Baron from The Witcher 3. There was a moment when Philip Stranger picks up Botchling and he carries him, or her actually, to the manor to bury her under the doorstep. And that's the quest I designed with when I was working on this, thinking about putting the player really in the shoes of Geralt so that you are there, you are present, and it happens as you are playing. It's not being told to you or shown to you. And this may actually sound pretty simple, but it's really, really difficult in execution. Because it's so much easier to actually have a cutscene that just cuts in and just shows you something that happens rather than tell the story through playing it. And I always put a lot of emphasis on this when we work together with my designers of like figuring out, how the narrative should be structured. But then there's more, The thing is that there is a moment when you're building your quests that you cannot really play the given section. You need to either tell it, show it, or tell it to the player. And the example I have here for you is the example from Battle of Kermoren. That's the quest I designed for The Witcher 3. Extremely complex quest. It kicked my ass, really. But probably the hardest quest I've ever done in my life. Thing is that during that quest, you have numerous situations when you're playing as Ciri. When you're playing as her, to see her perspective, when you're in different places in Kermoren, so that you can experience it firsthand as a player rather than having it shown to you. But then, of course, as a designer, there was a situation when I couldn't make it anymore, right? Like there's a limit of how much I can allow the player to play. Then there is a need of actually showing what's happening. An example when Geralt is with the witchers in the forest, and Triss casts the fire on a forest, and you see those witchers like fighting like badasses there. This is the example of show, right? Like I am showing you to the player like what's happening because I don't want to tell you that. I want to show you first. So I want you to play first, then I want to show it to you, and if I can't, only then I will actually go to telling you that. And the whole point of that is I want us as designers, when we work on our quests, our stories, to build drama through gameplay. Example from Phantom Liberty, again, very tiny spoiler. There is a moment when you're supposed to attack a convoy, right? And we put so much emphasis and so much work together with Piotr Kuma, the quest designer that built that section, to make sure that you have everything perfectly. The way how the cars arrive. Then there is a storm happening at the back, with the thunders. The moment when they go in, when they kick you out, when the music changes, and how the stages are built of this whole fight. We really wanted to make sure that you will be there for all that time as a player, and we'll be able to build that drama in gameplay rather than telling you or showing you something. And there's so many examples in Cyberpunk of this methodology in place. For instance, all the big boss fights, right? The moment when Cerberus appears, the moment when, our huge spider tank called Chimera appears in Phantom Liberty. I don't want to spoil more, but all of those moments you can see that they are very cinematic, but in the same time you are there as a player, you're playing that, and that helps you out to build that drama. And the secret sauce that we are using really to tell that story is those moments when, those guys, they have the special, I would say, comments, that they throw in every single time when you open up that convoy, they kick your ass, They go out, and every single time you can find out, who they are. They throw like certain specifically crafted comments, to build up and flesh them out more as a human beings. So it all comes together to just this need and this notion of building drama through gameplay, and us trying to do everything we can to really keep you as a player playing and telling the story through that. But then another thing is, as a designers, all of us have the tendency to design our sections and hand script it, and make it like all unique and perfect and different than other sections in our game. The thing is that eventually it falls apart. The thing is that eventually you, as a player, you see through it. You can see that, okay, this system or the solution that you have used in your game, it doesn't work the same way as it does in other places. And you find out that this is not a system that is actually running underneath, but a custom solution. And that's what we really pay a lot of attention to. We have done some mistakes with this in Witcher 3 and Cyberpunk. We've improved a lot in Phantom Liberty to really have that done in a way that you can see that we are using the systems. And a great example, police system in Phantom Liberty. It comes in, it's used multiple times during the quests. It's used, in vehicle gigs. It's used in multiple different scenarios, and every single time it acts the same way. Even more so, when you as a player, you play on Cyberpunk 2077 on version 2.0, there are those moments when you have either MaxTac or police being a part of the quests, and you can see that from version 2.0, they are part of a system. And what I mean by that, for instance, there is the quest Bullets, where you can meet Melissa Rory, the woman with the mantis blades from original 2012 trailer from Cyberpunk. Maybe you recognize her. That's the quest I designed and implemented. I really wanted to make sure we have her there. But when the MaxTac shows up, at the moment when we have in Phantom Liberty upgraded the whole police system, I made sure that actually this will be using the systemic solution. And I had to like rip the whole thing out almost internally. So for you as a player, the quest looks the same, but I have re-implemented it completely underneath. Because before it was a custom system, now I change it completely so that it actually uses the proper design solution. So in short, try to, when you're like implementing your quests and you're designing your quests, try not to go into custom solutions and figure out everything, script everything customly, but rather look into systems, because this gives player the consistency, and it shows that this, for the player, makes the game feel much more rich and also consistent. You understand the rules that govern those systems. Now, this is a short sum-up slide for what I was telling you about. You can see that for us, there's always this order. It's play, show, and tell, right? Like, you have this old storytelling trick called show, don't tell, right? That is actually something that we are using when it comes to video games. You should first play, and the reason is because our medium is interactive. That's the difference between us and the movies, right? If I want to watch a movie, I'm not going to go and play a game to watch a movie. I'm going to watch a movie to watch a movie, right? It makes complete sense, I hope. So we should be using the interactiveness of our games and build them like this. And I'm talking about this because there is a huge tendency, especially in AAA, to go towards more and more and more and more cinematic, rather than actually sticking into gameplay interactiveness and things that make our games really special and make our medium really special and different from other. Now, my dears, we are going to be talking now a bit more about choices and consequences in RPGs and in our games. And there's so much craft and there's so much technique and talent required to really build engaging dilemmas for the player. Like, we really want to make sure that when we are presenting a choice to a player, it's not a choice, it's not a question, would you go left or right, but it's a dilemma. It's something that you wouldn't know how to pick and what to decide and what to do. As a human beings in our life, every single day, or most of the days, we encounter various dilemmas. Should I kiss her? Should I not? Should we meet? What should I do? Like, there are dilemmas all the time in our lives. Things that will actually change our lives in the future, depending on the choices you make. And often, they're not clear. Actually, it's not clear, what to do in life. And video games for years have been teaching the players that that's not the case, that you have a very clear black and white choices in life, right? That it's obvious what to do. And, don't get me wrong. In life, sometimes it is clear what to do and what is the right choice. But very often, it's not. And very often, you will not know where a given choice is going to lead you. Those are the choices that we are trying to build. Things that you will encounter in your real life, and you would wonder, what the hell I'm supposed to do? The main choice in Hearts of Stone, the first expansion to The Witcher 3, the choice between Mr. Mirror and Olgierd. When you are doing that choice, you don't really know exactly what it is, where it's going to lead you to. So that's why I don't call it choices. I call it dilemmas, because it puts the emphasis on the right thing. There shouldn't be a situation when it's an obvious choice. And I'll tell you more about it in a second. Now, another thing is those choices should be ambiguous. Now, I love this word because it has so much meaning, in English at least. And you can say it shouldn't be clear. When we were designing the main choice in Phantom Liberty, the main choice when you are there, and Somi and Reed, you're there standing by this huge device and you're wondering what to do. Of course, we have crafted it and we built all of those characters to make sure you understand the context. And I'll talk to you about the context in a moment. But also, we didn't want to make it completely clear. Because how it is in life, you don't know what your choice is going to lead you to. Like, if I go and study making pottery versus video games, I don't know where those choices will lead me to, right? At the end of the day, I may meet people on my way that I wouldn't have otherwise, and they may change my life completely. Like, there is so many things that will actually change in your life, and you have to make decisions not having complete information. And even sometimes, we do the reverse. The main choice in The Witcher 3, when Geralt is making a choice by the tree in Bloody Baron storyline, we do the reverse there. We thought that if we have built it in a way that as a player, you're going to feel most likely, that you probably want to defeat the tree, or, you may have different ideas about this, but we consciously really did it in a way that we wanted to reverse everything, because we wanted to confuse you, that was the point. The thing is that sometimes, as a designers, we want to subvert your expectations. Sometimes you have an hypothesis, you have an idea what the given choice is, and we want to change it and we want to twist it. I always tell my designers that our job as designers, as quest designers, is to control what player feels and what player thinks. Those two things. That's our job as a designers, as a creators. When we're making art of any kind, that's what we want to do. You want to get through the logic, get through that logical brain, and get to the emotions of a given person, and really touch them. And I'll tell you more about this later. Another thing is that the conflicts that you have in your game, and again, the conflicts are incredibly important. I could spend separate coupled hours talking about the conflict, how important it is for your characters. But it's important that those conflicts are authentic. And I love this word. The authentic means real, means something that you could encounter in your life, and you could use a method that I call personalization. When I ask my designers, okay, if that choice is good, let's imagine you designed a quest and you're wondering, is that choice that I made, that I structured, that I wrote, is this a good choice? Is this an interesting choice? I always ask them, use the personalization method. Put yourself into the shoes of that exact character and use your own brain, your own mind, your own experience, your own empathy. Think that you are that exact person making that decision, and what would you do? And you will immediately see if something is fake or not. And you will immediately see. Because the thing is that because we are used to the suspension of disbelief on a screen, we are learning as designers, but as a players, but then as a designers we need to make a step forward. We are learning as a players that it's fine when something is a bit fake on a screen. Because that's not how it really happens in real life. But we know that this is on a screen because it's a game, it's a movie, so it's fine, it's fake. I always try to teach my designers, no, it's not fine. It's not fine. It should be authentic. It should make you as a person, as a human being, really wonder what to do and how to build it. And you know, an example from the actual CGI for The Witcher 3 in this case, famous Killing Monsters CGI, the moment when Geralt makes a decision to get involved when he shouldn't, right? And that's it. There is a very deep conflict built into this, because like what they are doing, you know, they're threatening a person who is definitely weaker than them. He can, of course, you know, protect her, but he would have to take their lives, most likely, in the same time, and get involved in something he shouldn't be. But that's something that we can relate as human beings to that kind of issue. And you can really build those conflicts inside into your story and really make that story really run on those conflicts. And our story director, Tomek Marchewka, the guy with whom I worked on Phantom Liberty, he used to say that the characters are as interesting as the conflicts they're involved in. That's the thing. And I really love that way of thinking about this. Okay then, my dears, another thing in regards of the choices, and it's the contextualizing every major choice. Now, I touched this quite a bit just before, so we'll just make an underline one point, which is that the choices themselves are not really that interesting if they were not built up before. So what I mean by that, you need to have a character introduced before. You need to have a context of a situation introduced before. You need to, one by one, explain the situation so that the player knows consciously what decision they are making. That's a very, very crucial point. So every major choice should be contextualized. Sorry, chums. So every major choice should be contextualized. If you won't do it, they will just feel like fake choices, they will feel shallow, and player won't care. Really, player won't care, because it will be so obvious what to do and what not. This example, this is, of course, Hearts of Stone from The Witcher 3 first expansion. This is the wedding quest, the one that I designed as well. I wanted here to bring up shiny, because a lot of you, I don't know if you played Witcher 1. Some of you probably were in diapers when Witcher 1 was released. But basically, in Witcher 1, you could end up the game having Shani as your waifu, right? And then what happens? She is not present in Witcher 2. That's a major bummer, right? Like, so I really wanted to bring her back in The Witcher 3. That's why she's here. And of course, you know, here the context, of course, is if you're dedicated, if you have dedicated yourself to Triss or Yennefer, and what happens then, you know? For you as a human being, of course, you know, you are, that whole flirt throughout the quest is really contextualized. I really made sure that everything that happens there is really a conscious play of me as a designer, between me as a designer and you as a player. I need to really speed up because, no surprise, I'm behind the time. So, my dears, another thing really important for game design in general is telegraphing. So telegraphing in the terms of game design, when you have a boss, like, you know, we probably play Elden Ring, when you fight against the boss and the boss has certain attacks, those attacks are being telegraphed, right? That's how we call it. It's either a VFX or a sound or an animation. There's always something that the boss does to telegraph, to show that something is going to happen. That's the word that we are using to describe showing to the player the consequences of their choices. It's a very intriguing topic. You know, in The Witcher 3, a lot of players actually, after the release of Cyberpunk, told us that Cyberpunk has less choices than The Witcher 3. And I started actually analyzing that. It's a very intriguing topic, because the thing is that Witcher 3 has a built-in mechanics that shows you the consequences. You walk into the Krauss Perch after Baron took off his life, and then you have a flashback. And Geralt says, because I did this, then this or that happened. What it is? It's telegraphing consequences. It's a method that is built into the design of the game that is meant to show you the results of your choices. Now, as a player, I can make so many different choices, and all of those consequences, they need to be shown to me. They need to be visible to me. In The Witcher 3, the structure of the game helps out to do that. Because at first, you go to No Man's Land, to Skellige, to Novigrad, you go to Kaer Morhen, and then you go back to each of those hubs. What happens if you go back? You see the consequences. The Witcher 3 has inside the structure built in a method that shows us and helps us to telegraph the consequences. You see, what's the result of the chase for the crown on Skellige, and so on. So that is a really intriguing topic. And the thing was that for Cyberpunk, actually, that's not the case. In Cyberpunk, you don't have flashbacks. You're always in first person. You're always in shoes of V. There's no moments that we can, in such a simple way as in Witcher, show it to you. So we had to develop different methods. But the thing was that during working on Cyberpunk, we didn't know it yet. Now I know it. After the couple years of doing the game, now I know that's the case, but I didn't know it before, because we have figured this out. We have learned how to do that. And in Phantom Liberty, we have done so much more of it when it comes to telegraphing the consequences. And here, of course, the example here that you can see, this is Mr. Mirror with a skull of one of the characters. I won't say who, but of course, that telegraphing there is really, really simple. And always the rule is, when you have a choice, you telegraph the consequences twice. You telegraph it immediately, and you telegraph it with a delay. So there's something that I made a choice, and immediately something happens that is a transition from what I have decided to do, and in natural way is a continuation of my intent, of what I intended to do. So that's one thing. But second consequence is the one that is delayed. Is the one that's delayed. It's much later that as a player I can see, I can find, and it will come to me, and I will understand then what happened. And in Phantom Liberty, you will see, if you played it, hopefully, or you will see that there's so much more telegraphing the consequences. Now, my dears, another thing is that as a designers, I always encourage my team to design those consequences in a symmetrical way. This is such a cool way to do it, because the thing is that as a designers, we often have this fear of okay, player make branch 1 or branch 2 or branch 3, and we want to make them the same playtime. So one branch is 5 minutes, another one has to be 5 as well. No, it doesn't have to be. If you, in your game, have many different branches, as we do, in this case, you can have those branches asymmetrical. In some cases, it will be just a scene, but in another case, it will be a whole romance scene, as I did with Meredith Stout in Cyberpunk 2077, Venus in Furs, right? That one-night stand that you can have with her. That is a example of very asymmetrical design consequences when, depending on what you have chosen, completely different things happen. And the thing is, it has huge advantage. Because as a player, I have a feeling that this is my version of the story. This is so different. This is the way I played. This is the way this is what I decided to do. Really, really powerful structure. Now, of course, in situation when, let's say, you have maybe 10 consequences in your game, and if you design them all asymmetrically, then you end up in situation that one playthrough of one player is much shorter than in the other. So that method is actually usable really well in situation when you, as a designer, you're working on a game that is, let's say, AAA open world RPG. There's a lot of different content, and you can actually afford it, and you can actually make it. Because then at the end of the day, every player will have, shorter branch on one side and longer branch on another. At the end of the day, it will all come together as one experience. Okay then, my dears, so summing it all up, with the choices and consequences, what you want to do when you are designing your story, designing your narrative, you want to engage with choices, and then you want to pay off with consequences. The payoff is a fantastic word in English. I really like it. I really like using it. It's something that comes from Hollywood. Maybe you know it. The payoff is a result on the screen of what I have done, of what has happened. So let's say if the character has been built up in a certain way on a screen, and we know that this character is a person who eventually is going to betray probably, his master. I don't know if you watch Shogun Netflix, a fantastic series. And a great example of that, right? Like the payoffs that are done in the series, amazing. Like you set up something very slowly, you drip in, you show, the character traits of a person. You show up, a political situation, what may happen, and then eventually you capitalize it on this one moment, on this one scene to show it. And here is the example from, of course, the CGI for Phantom Liberty, the moment in the past where Solomon Reed gets beaten up. I am not going to say more here, but this is exactly that. This is a part of a build-up that later has its payoff in the game. And this is how we have structured it consciously, because we wanted to have this, in a way, almost like a transmedia narrative between the trailer and our game. Okay then, so another thing that I want to focus on is a theme and a genre for your story. The thing is that there's so many games, so many creators, and when I talk with them, even big studios sometimes, and I ask them when they're like 3-4 years sometimes into working on their game, and I ask them what's the theme of the game, and they have no idea what's the theme of the game. Or they tell me like that the theme of the game is a gameplay feature that they have. And that's not the theme. The theme is a topic. It's like what your game is about. That is the theme. In example of Phantom Liberty, the theme is defined as an opposition, and I really love defining it like this. So it's the individuality versus authority. That's how it's defined for Phantom Liberty. And both Reed and Somi are representing those sides of the theme. Why it's important? First of all, the theme defined as opposition has its own strengths, because like as a designer, you have conflict that is ingrained in your narrative by default. You can define the theme in different ways, and I will tell you more later. I think I can actually mention it here, which is like, for instance, on Blood and Wine, the theme was the love that can kill. And it was it. That was really it. That was always just this one sentence that brings us in to like, what is the topic of the expansion, or of the topic of the story. And in here, in Phantom Liberty, when we've been working on the quests for our game, we've been thinking about it, okay, in what ways we can show the theme in action, how we can see the individuality clashing with authority. Authority here is represented by Reed. That whole spy story really comes from there. Super important to define your theme, because it will guide you. It will help you out to make your design choices of what you want to have in your game. Another thing, my dears, is the genre. This is a very rare thing when it comes to video games. I'm rarely seeing it. Defining the genre helps you so much, together with the theme, to know what you are actually building. And I'll tell you in a second. So look at this. This is a Blood and Wine example. Blood and Wine is actually a chanson de geste. Chanson de geste is a 16th century type of an old French story about the errant knights and the deeds that knights are doing for the lady of their heart and so on. And you have all of that throughout the whole expansion. It's so rare and so unique that it's helped us out to guide us through building that expansion, the Blood and Wine in this case. So if you define the genre, you will be able to set the boundaries for yourself. The boundaries for any creator are like one of the most liberating things that you can imagine. It's something that will help you out so much to come up with the answers of what you should have in your game, what you have in your story, in your quests. When we worked on Somewhat Damaged from Phantom Liberty, the quest that is a horror, it was so powerful. The fact that we have defined it really early with my team of that this is going to be a horror, and every single time when they worked on solutions, on ideas, what they should have in that quest, I always came back to the same thing and asked them, what is the genre? What is the genre that we're working for? Because the thing is that we are all very creative people. And the thing is that you will have so many ideas, and a lot of those ideas will be great ideas, but they just won't match. They just won't fit into that boundary. And you need to define that boundary. Because if you don't, then it's fucking chaos. That's what it is. Then everyone does what they want, and they do something else, and they do something different, and they're not on the same page, especially when your team is a growing team. When you have a team that you have some juniors, some specialists, you also have experts and seniors. For them all to communicate, having a genre defined is incredibly valuable. Another trick that we actually learned during Phantom Liberty and work on Phantom Liberty is to label the story beats. And this is a very specific trick, but I really love it. It's the moment when we as designers, when we divide the quest into sections, we decide that this given section is going to be like this, and then we give it a label. An example, the moment when you're going into the bunker where the Cerberus is, the moment when the Cerberus comes in, we were calling this entering the lair of the monster. The moment when we are going onto the elevator, sliding down, the mini-map slowly turns off, all of those elements. But then there's the moment when the monster shows up, and that was always for us the entrance of the Shelob from Lord of the Rings. You know, when the Shelob walks over you and she hangs over Frodo and you can see it, that is the same scene. That was the label that we have given to that section so that we could clearly communicate between multiple different departments and be like, that is the feeling, that is the feeling of that moment. The whole quest here, when you are going to the Black Sapphire and meeting the twins, that whole section, we have labeled it as a Bond-like quest. And what do you do there? Well, at the very beginning, you are going diving, you know, you get off, you take off the diving suit and you are in a suit. You go on a party. On a party, you meet various people where you can mingle with them, listen to them. Then you go in and you play a hazard game. You know, those are elements, typical elements of a spy, in this case, spy story. And we have labeled that section as a Bond-esque type of a mission. And that has helped us out to guide us through the decision of how it should look like and all of the small design elements that came into play to realize it on the screen. And then, my dears, one of the dirty tricks that we are using in CD PROJEKT, which is always characters over the plot. Always characters over the plot. When you are thinking about the games that you played or about the movies that you saw, are you ever thinking like, wow, that story was so amazing and there was this crazy plot twist and, you know, really made me think and really surprised me? No. You think about like, hey, Panam was my waifu, or Judy, or I was with Kerry or River. That's what you think. You think I wanted to romance Takemura and didn't allow me. That's what you think, right? You think about characters. You don't remember the plot. The thing is, the plot has to be done really well. It has to be very logical, has to be well put together, but your characters are your most important driving force. They're your most powerful weapon, and always prioritize them over the plot. In a lot of the movies done in Hollywood nowadays, you can see that there is this certain narrative structure that every single movie follows. That when you have a character that you know that there is a moment when the character in a typical 3-act structure has to be in the lowest moment of their story. Doesn't matter if it breaks their character or not. They do that, and I hate it. We never do that. We never follow this, because the thing is, like, if you keep breaking your character like this, you will have the feeling that this character is not real anymore. That is actually what happens very often to series, movie series that are really long-running series for like many seasons. You can see that, oh, in season 2, this character got new character traits by some reason because they needed it for the plot, or this character has some other character traits, and it becomes a chaos. It becomes a chaos. What we do in CD PROJEKT, we always prioritize the character over the plot. Sure, there are moments when you have to bend them and you have to make them be like, okay, maybe they can do this, maybe with this small change in their personality, we can do that. To make both work really well, but never break your characters, because your players won't forgive you. And my dears, we are getting closer to the end. I mean, we are not at all, but I'm doing my best. So, intentionally create contrast, super important in storytelling. If you have in storytelling, we have a term called pacing. Pacing is the rhythm of the narrative, of what are the events happening one after another. And in video games, this is especially important. If you have too much combat one after another and you keep fighting and you keep praying, oh God, when is the end of this quest? or where I can finally have like a cutscene at the end because I'm so done with this. That's the feeling you don't want to have. You always want to capture the player in a way that they are having enough combat, enough story, enough characters, enough art, and it goes one after another in this unison, in this beautiful harmony. You don't want to have one over another, and you don't want to have too much. And creating contrast helps you with that. If you have a calm down section in your story, then the next one should be something with a fast-paced action, with high-octane action, with a lot of things exploding on the screen. And then again, you can slow down, if you want to, of course, if it fits to your narrative. But creating contrast like this makes it fresh, makes it exciting. It doesn't make it boring. It's super, super important. Another thing when it comes to the contrast is contrast is somewhat very important for Cyberpunk as a genre in general, but this is more specific to Cyberpunk in itself, that Cyberpunk is contrast. The example with the tree that you can see here in a container zone, this zone built of these metal containers, and you have this tree of the dead in a center with lampoons. Really beautiful contrast. It makes you feel that this location is really real and something that humans could have created. So contrast really helps you out to make your game feel much more intriguing, interesting. You surprise the player, you delight them. Okay, then, my dears, I need to speed up because we're going to be sitting here all day. So, okay, then. So summing up, define a theme and a genre. Please remember about this. They are going to guide you. Even when you're a developer that has a couple people in your team, there are people who are more capable, more experienced, more creative than other. And there will be people that will have more trouble with that than the other. And for some people, this will be very useful. It will guide you, and you will know what you're doing. Like, define the character of your game and stick to this. Okay, then. Another thing, and it's like, this is one of my favorites, quantity over quality. My dears, no one is getting excited about the fact that your game has like 200 hours of fetch quests. That's not something that players play your game for. They play for emotions. They play for excitement. They play for experience. They do not play to spend hours in front of PC. They can do so many things to just burn the time. They don't need your game to do that. Of course, you have to provide enough quantity in your game to be sure that the players have enough experience, that they have enough value, that they felt well, that felt well treated, that the product felt finished, the game felt finished. This is really important. But then there is a moment when you're like way over that, and you're pumping the amount of things rather than focusing on quality. And with Phantom Liberty, actually, we have tried really, really hard to make sure that we strike that exact perfect balance, that every single quest, every single story, every single branch is going to feel really satisfactory, but it's not too much. You won't be tired of this, what you have there. We have put emphasis into quality, into ideas, into things that are deep, and I'll talk to you about this in a second, rather than into the amount of them. And here's the example from Fairy Tale World, right? One of the branches in Blood and Wine expansion for The Witcher 3, as you know. And that one is actually a pretty big one, but there's only a couple important interactions that you can do as a player in that Fairy Tale World. And everything we put into the quality, into making you really feel that you are in that very special place. Now, another thing, and this is the topic that's sort of connected to the previous one, is the width versus length. Is that when you're working on RPGs, and again, this is more a topic for an RPGs rather therefore in action games, is to prioritize width over length. So you want to have couple more branches rather than having it longer. Because like when it's longer, it's harder to control the pacing. It's harder to make the player really engaged, really rewarded. It's harder to keep the emotions going. But with the width, with the amount of branches, as a player, what I can do, I can experience that game again. I can go in, I can replay, and I can try different build, different romances. You know, I can try, I don't know, different gender, different voice, build my character differently. I can do all of those things because there's a width in your game, but the length, try to always keep it as well as you can, as perfect as you can, so it just feels enough, but you don't really feel that player is tired. You know, I recently have been playing, you know, couple indie games, and I love playing indie games, incredibly creative. And you know, like, there was this amazing indie game, I don't want to say a name of it because I don't want to criticize it, but incredible. Like, I had such a good time with it. But it was twice too long. It was twice too long. Like, at some point, I was like, oh my God, I'm just tired of just this constantly. Like, it felt like they didn't know where to finish, you know? Like, they had good ideas, they had good amount of stuff, but it just kept going forever. And as a player, I was like, Jesus, this has no end. Like, that's the only game I'm gonna play till my death, you know? So that's how it felt, you know. So like, really try to balance this, because like having it long and a lot of it is not a solution. Now, my dears, one of my favorite things: design bold set pieces. Cyberpunk 2077 and Sinnerman, right? Joshua Stevenson is the guy who wants to die on a cross, and his death on a cross, he wants it to be recorded as a brain dance for people to go in and relieve. You know, of course, this relates to Christianity, but we have done it in a way that during the quest, you can, as a player, pray in various different ways, or you can even decide not to. The thing is, like, it takes a lot of balls to make a quest like this, especially in Poland, as you can imagine. So the thing is that what I always try to encourage my designers to do is like try to look for bold set pieces, like those bold moments, because they will stay in the player's memory so much. The moment when you're going into Black Sapphire and you're sitting there with Kurt Hansen and you know that, and you know, you're pretending to be someone else and you need to carefully make choices, you know, depending of the this small set of information that you have, is really thrilling. And it took us a lot of work to, you know, get that piece done, but it's so worth it. It's so worth it. It's like one of the most fun moments for our players. So those bold set pieces, those moments, they really stay in your memory. The example I gave you before, the max stack, and you know, the storm at the back, and then the thunders, and them jumping off, and then attacking you, fighting with you. Amazing set piece. There's just so many set pieces in Phantom Liberty. And that's the way when we think about our quests, I always try to like ask my designers, okay, just please remove everything in between as not needed, and just stick to those bold moments, those bold set pieces, and design around them. It just stay so much in your memory. And again, you know, I can bring you so many examples here. Somewhat Damaged, for instance, you know, the quest with that monstrosity that is chasing you in the bunker, probably all of you remember. Now, another thing that I wanted to point out, and that is actually really a very specific, I would say, method, is to surpass expectations for our players. But our players will have so many expectations about so many things you're doing. They will have so many hypotheses of what you're building. And you cannot really you know, surpass those expectations everywhere. There will be situations where you have to make decisions when you're like, okay, this really, I really want to invest in that moment, you know, in the game. An example, when you're in Black Sapphire and Phantom Liberty and you stand there, and then there's the whole concert of Lizzy Weezy playing there at the back, just gigantic, really expensive asset that we have produced for you as a player that is completely at the background, that you can completely miss. Those are the moments. The moments when, as a player, you're surprised of like how much depth there is in that solution, in that moment that you have picked. And the thing is, you don't have to do it everywhere. You don't have to. It's enough to make choices strategically. Pick just a couple places and invest in that, because this will stay in the player memory. You cannot do it everywhere. In the whole game, from beginning till the end, it doesn't work. Also, like, if you are all the time thrilled as a player, or if you are all the time scared, or if you are all the time feeling certain emotion, then you stop feeling that emotion after a while. You need a change. That's the reason why you like pick those moments and invest in those moments and make them bigger, make them more robust, invest more money, put more people on them. And then, my dears, make space for narrative events. Oh, God, this one is my favorite one. You know, imagine the situation. You're lying there with Judy, you know, after sex with her. You're, you know, hugging each other, looking into each other's eyes. You know, the time is passing, and no one is going anywhere, right? And in our lives, as human beings, that's what we do, right? Well, like when we are with our loved ones, we stay together with them, we give them time, we give them our attention. We don't go run away and get, you know, trash out, you know, because that's the next objective to do. That's always the approach I'm trying to tell my designers. Give events space on the screen. They need time. They need time. Because otherwise it feels you're rushing way too much. And, you know, the moment here actually in the trailer from Blood and Wine, you know, the moment when Geralt is facing the Bruxa, and, you know, there is this moment when actually she is already down and the camera zooms in on her face and just shows her eyes for a couple seconds and just slowly stays there and nothing else happens. That is art. That is what we are trying to do. You are trying as a designer to control thoughts and feelings of the player. You don't have to give the player immediately next objective to run for. Just make space for those events to happen because you are trying to create emotions. That's our job. Okay, then, my dears, we are getting there eventually. So the next thing I wanted to touch is the fact that, you know, in our games, you know, in the games often you have these moments that we call busy work. You know, the moments when you're running from point to point and you're asked to, you know, do certain things in a certain way, you know, because like someone has to know something and you need to run from one point to another. I always ask my designers, please just remove that. Because that busy work is completely not needed for anything. It just completely dilutes your narrative and it makes it worse. You know, Stephen King, in his biography, he wrote that there isn't a story that wouldn't benefit from being shorter. That's it. Every time when you can make your story shorter and when you remove the busy work, when you remove something that we call a filler, that we remove something that's not needed for it, it makes it more punchy. It makes it more serious. It makes it more impactful. And the player will cherish those moments with your game. They will come there, they will play it, they will love every minute of it. And that's what you want. You don't want them to be bored for an hour, for a 10 minutes of amazing section. You want them to be delighted for all that time. Keep the fluff, though. Eradicate filler, keep the fluff. What the fluff is, actually in our terms, the fluff are all of those moments when you as a designer are creating something that are making the world deeper. Let's say you have an emails in the computers. In Cyberpunk, or text messages that you can go in and read on your own volition as a player. You can go in Witcher 3 and just read that notes that are there. All of those things are actually making the world richer, but they are optional. As a player, I can dive in, I can see it, I can feel how rich that world is, how well it was constructed, but it's not something I have to do. It's not something I have to go through to really play your game. And my dears, my favorite point of all of them, amuse and thrill your players. What are we doing here in this industry? We are creating experiences, right? We do not sell product, like none of us makes doors or chairs or roads, even though those are important. What we do, we make experience. That's the business that we're at. We make emotions. You want to create situations in your game and even around your game, as Keanu Reeves here, that you will thrill your players, that you make them excited, that you want them to come to you, to have more of it. You want to capture their imagination, you want to seduce them. That's your job. You are going to sell shit ton of your game if you do that. So you don't have to focus on this. You focus on experience first, right? On what you are really building. So when you are creating your game and when you're thinking about your game holistically, from the beginning, from the way how it's structured, even to the marketing of the game, to the actors you pick, if you are, of course, have a budget for it. But you can do it with so many smaller things. And there's so many examples of even indie games having incredible success. Among Us, for instance, it's a great example when they were still indie, before they became a huge company as they are right now. There's so many examples of small games actually successfully pulling this off. So think about this. You're not making software. That's not what we do here. None of us make software. We make video games. We make experiences, and we make emotions for our players. And my dears, that are the takeaways for you. I don't know, maybe a slide for a picture, if you want to. I'm trying to wrap this up, kind-ish. I'm absolutely over the time, but that's fine, I guess. And then, yeah, there's more actually. I forgot to tell you, but there's some hidden points I have on this list. So there's one extra video recommendation I wanted to give you. I did a talk on GDC last year about the key quest design lessons. Some of it you heard today, a lot of it you didn't. It's free on YouTube. You can take a look and watch it. It's very much complementary to what I was talking about today. So please do so. It will be a pleasure. You can leave a comment as well for me that you watched it. That will be sweet. There's another talk that I did as well this year on GDC. It will be eventually on YouTube as well, so you can take a look there. And my dears, thank you so much, my chums. So I actually have this slide here, but I'm not really sure how it works.
Yeah, unfortunately we're way over time, but thank you for the great talk, and yeah, so give Paweł a big applause again. Thank you.
Thank you.
好，那不好意思，因为时间的关系哦，我们等一下所有的 Q&A 就直接在外面照相墙那边进行哈。